my Joseph Gordon-Levitt in
Premium Rush.
Premium Rush moment. I'm like, this package needs to get to Boys to Men right away. It was pretty awesome, man. So I'm proud of that. Whatever they needed, I got it to them. It was good.
I'm proud that you helped them out because I like those Boys to Men.
Sure, yeah. Well, they were boys, and now they're men.
They never felt like boys to me. They always felt like they had the wisdom and the sensitivity of men.
All right, this is a goofy one. Okay, movies from the years we turned 22.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, that year is 2008. For you,
yeah, it's 2004.
2004.
Yeah. So yeah, Spider-Man 2 was my favorite movie, or is my favorite movie of 2004.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't in 2004. I was riding the high of Spider-Man 2 for a while, but then towards the end of the year, it was the trifecta of Sideways, The Aviator, and $1 Million Baby, and I was like, ooh, I love all of these.
Yeah.
And then and Spider-Man 2 was like in my top 10 for that year, I remember, because I was making lists for myself and not sharing it with anybody at the time. But I saw Spider-Man 2 like 3 times in theaters in 2004. Really loved it. I was more of the opinion of being like a Spider-Man 2002 fan.
Mm-hmm.
But I've since flipped that. I like Spider-Man 2 more than Spider-Man. But the thing that I find interesting with Spider-Man 2 is that I look at it now where I appreciate it from like all of the groundbreaking things that it's doing that I think other superhero movies kind of picked up on along the way, which is focus on the characters. That's going to carry you through almost anything. Like the action sequences are almost like ornaments to like the tree being like your relationships and the story and everything like that.
Yeah, having rewatched both the first ones recently, Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, I've always been a Spider-Man 2 guy. I love Spider-Man 2. It's my favorite Marvel, it's my favorite superhero movie just in general. I loved the way that it built on the first one. The first one does all the heavy lifting. The second one really, really nails the character relationships a lot better. It really like it got through all the scaffolding of setting up the origin story and all that, and sort of the key dynamics. But it really, really nails the characters. It's in such a great, albeit like for our standards today, pretty cheesy, but that's Silver Age Spider-Man. That's exactly what it should be. Raimi understands like exactly the tone that the Spider-Man, universe should take, which is kind of corny. It's kind of cheesy,
But the thing I love most about Spider-Man 2 is that it says things in scenes that lesser movies would delay for dramatic stakes.
Mm-hmm.
It like there's certain things like he tells Rosemary Harris, Aunt May, he's like, oh, I'm responsible for Uncle Ben.
Right.
And he's just like telling MJ like on the phone after like his call gets disconnected, he's like, I'm Spider-Man. And then he's like, when he meets up with Harry and like Harry unmasks him, which is like a reveal that I remember being like the most like tantalized by when I saw the trailers for, like out of like any type of like, oh, I got to see how this plays out. Like that was the moment that I think, made me eager so much.
And that moment's like Shakespearean, like he's got the dagger, and all that. That's great.
It's just, there's a lot of conversations that like you would have in real life with urgency because the situation, necessitates it. But like in movies, it's usually delayed for false drama. And that's something that I liked with Spider-Man 2 is because they're just like, no, let's get this out of the way and then let's build on that. So it's like a more courageous movie from that standpoint because it could have taken it like, played it pretty safe, but then it doesn't. Obviously, like when I was younger, it really kind of affected me as like an allegory for depression. Mm-hmm. Now I don't feel as sad as I used to. So like I can kind of enjoy the movie more as like a popcorn type of experience. But at the time, it was almost like a therapeutic, like self-care type of cinema.
Exactly.
Because it's nice to see, like, I always disagree with people, not that there's any wrong way to do it, but I always disagree, like, if you're sad, it's like intuitive to be like, well, I need to watch something that'll cheer me up. But like for me, it was always, I want something to mirror what I'm feeling
Yes.
right now.
I think this is why we're such good buds, because I am the same way, where like I want to interrogate my depression. Like I want to dig into it and rip it apart, figure out what's making it tick. I don't want happy, cheery bullshit when I'm down.
It felt like a movie that like was speaking to me, even though it wasn't meant to be speaking to me directly.
It really is. So much of his story is about that sort of like, look, it's okay to that this sucks. Like it's okay to be down about this. It's okay that you can't get your shit together.
Yeah.
Um, and it doesn't make you a bad person, you know, and it's really hard and all that. And that's just stuff like, I don't care how old you are, like we need to tell ourselves that every now and again. You need to tell yourself like it is okay that things are fucked up right now. It is okay that your girlfriend is mad at you, or that this is this or that's that, or you lost your job or whatever.
There's so many superheroes where their alter ego, whether it be Bruce Wayne or what's Daredevil, Matt Murdock or whatever, like they're of means. And it's kind of a separation between the audience and them, because it's like they have the resources, whether it be financially, or in the case of like the Watts trilogy, it's like he's got this benefactor basically with Tony Stark. Like in No Way Home, there's literally like a box in his room that can solve like any myriad of problems. And the thing that's interesting with Tobey Maguire in the Raimi trilogy is like he's in a worse position than most of the people watching the movie.
Yeah.
And it gives you something to almost be kind of protective of. Like you want him to succeed at least to the level that you're at. Like it doesn't mean that he needs to be, you know, all powerful and all, you know, capable, but like you want him to at least achieve the pleasures that a normal person would.
Yeah. And there's so much of that in this movie, where everything is constantly, all the action is constantly layered through character. All the dramatic beats are layered through character. Everything is about where the character is at. The fact that Peter loses his powers because he can't get his personal life together. You know, he's literally losing his mojo. He can't do anything. He's committing himself to this life, even though it's costing him the life that he wants. And it's ruining the life that he's forced to have. You know what I mean? He can't have it. It's not even like he can't have it both ways. He can't have it either way. And there are times where we feel like that. You know, there's times where that's such a relatable thing.
And it's also these self-imposed restrictions that you put on yourself, because a lot of the stuff that he, you know, one of the things we were talking about it over text, it's like the line in the final scene that breaks me each time is when she says, you know, isn't it about time somebody saved your life? And it just speaks to something kind of similar to what the train scene is saying. It's just like, you don't have to do this all by yourself. Like, obviously you have these powers that are unique to you and everything like that, but like don't think that you have to go at this completely alone. And that's another thing that's kind of a depression metaphor.
It's a really hard thing for a lot of people, and I just speak for myself, a lot of people to learn, because I'm still the kind of person who just feels like no, you are capable of handling this, therefore you must handle it. You know, and getting over that, and it is really difficult. It's really, really hard to do. And just to speak to that scene, I mean, I just think it's the best scene in any Marvel. I just her in the dress, and I mean, it's just it's so cathartic. Like that right before that dashboard song comes on, and then she said like your line is, isn't it about time somebody saved your life? My line is go get him Tiger. Like there's no better moment in cinema. Like he looks at her, they kiss, and then the siren goes on, and he looks at her. He gives her that look of like, did I just ruin this? Is this ruined? And it's just like, go get him, Tiger. And you just see it's the best Tobey Maguire's ever been in this role. Like he's just like, and then the cherry on top is the graduate shot at the end. Where it cuts back to her, like, and it's that look of like, oh, I don't know, you know, which it's the kind of thing that
the sour and the sweet.
These movies get away with not having to do anymore, because it's like, oh, Daredevil's in a scene. You know what I mean? Like that look on Kirsten Dunst's face is better than 50 Infinity Wars. Like it's just is so much. And then that dashboard song kicks in, like Vindicated, like which is just like, that was, and I was already like a Drive-Thru Records emo kid at the time, and that was just like, yeah.
It's so refreshing when you're watching a movie and you're just like, this movie loves me. Like like it cares about you as an audience member. It's like
Yes.
it cares about like telling you a good story. Everybody there is committed to like performing at the top of their game. They know that the movie could be something special and they're going for it. And it's so rare that whatever the factors may be allows for something like that to
Mhm.
happen. 2008 uh
2008.
was
So
the before we reveal the title, was this movie your favorite movie in 2008?
I feel I wasn't making lists at the time.
Okay.
2008 was a big year for movies, obviously. You can go
Yeah.
back and look, and if that's like Dark Knight, Iron Man, stuff like that. I did love this movie in 2008 because my friends and I had gone to see it, and have since been repeating lines from it over and over again. And I've written about this movie in the past. Today, as I look at the list, it's there's no question. My favorite movie of 2008 is In Bruges, Martin McDonagh's film In Bruges.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking to what we were talking about with Spider-Man 2, I've discovered about myself that I love movies that are really funny and really sad. Like
Yeah.
I love this story. And then I wrote a column a couple years ago about um, the way it uses the city as kind of like a liminal space, like a holding, like a purgatory,
Sure.
where
Yeah.
the characters come in, and Colin Farrell is he's basically waiting to hear if he's going to live or die. And
Mm.
so much of the movie is this sort of just wandering around the city, meeting these different sort of eccentric characters while he sort of contemplates his mortality and contemplates what he did. And he's in this space where it's like almost like he's in a, I grew up Catholic, so it's like, it's like he's in a confessional. And the Brendan Gleeson character is there in some ways to cheer him up, but then in other ways to kind of also think about whether or not he deserves to live. And the movie ends up being this really, really beautiful, funny, sad look at like, what do we do once we've made mistakes and can't change the past?
Yeah.
Once it's done, it's done. And you have to keep living. You have to decide to keep living. You have to decide to keep going. You have to
Mm.
change the context of your life. You have to rearrange the way you feel about things. You have to rearrange the way you feel about yourself. And then also it's got lines that my friends and I have been quoting for, the alcoves, the fucking alcoves, like, things like Jesus, it's only Jesus fucking blood. Those lines like just are so absurd and so funny. And it's got my single favorite frame of film in any movie ever. I'm going to put it up
Oh
on the
wow.
screen right now. It's the Brendan Gleeson face. So a movie that can be just so absurd
Mm.
about huge existential topics. That's just, I mean, my favorite movie this year was The Worst Person in the World. And it's just like, that's exactly what that movie is. That movie is like hilarious self-loathing. And that's
Yeah.
like 100% my jam. That's why I love Palm Springs. Like, that's who I am. That's my shit. That's my kind of movie.
I love it, and I think I love it in a completely different way than you do.
Nice. That's awesome.
Because I I can see everything that you're saying, but like while I'm watching the movie, I'm just kind of like, oh, there's a lot to this. And then like I just kind of like focus back on the things that interest me.
Yeah.
But the stuff that interests me the most is like I remember this being the pivotal Colin Farrell movie for me, where I was like,
So good in this.
because he's so funny in this, and it's very similar in the same way of like Travolta as Vincent Vega, where it's just like these guys are scoundrels but like they're super likable in certain ways, and they're really funny, and just kind of his immaturity is like really hilarious because you can tell Brendan Gleeson's performance, like playing off of him, is so important because it's kind of like if he thought that this guy was just beyond the pale, like you would project that onto Colin Farrell, but like because Brendan Gleeson's sort of slightly protective and amused by him, like you kind of are allowed to do so. And I prior to this, like Colin Farrell was somebody that I felt like was being jammed down my throat,
Yeah.
and like I just wasn't. And I'd seen him be good and stuff. Like I liked him in Tigerland and things like that. But like I thought of him more as the guy who like it was the recruits and SWAT and all this stuff like that. And then when I saw In Bruges, it kind of course corrected all of his previous stuff for me, where I was just like, oh no, he was really good in all of these. It was just a lot at once.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a McConaughey thing a little bit too, where like retroactively, I'm like, oh, some of that stuff wasn't so bad.
Or like the studios are pitching him a certain way, because of the way he looks. And it's like,
Because he
no,
wasn't
he's
allowed to
actually,
do anything like this before.
yeah. So he is more of a McConaughey, Brad Pitt, where he's like a character actor trapped in a very attractive man's body, you know, so the studio doesn't always know what to do with him right away.
And I like the specificity of place in this one. That's something I love in movies, especially nowadays, because so many movies are shot in Georgia and like are, you know, on like 360-degree like CGI fake backgrounds like The Mandalorian, which it looks great, but like it's still like it doesn't feel like a real thing at all. Yeah, this was fun. We should do more of these. Like next year, we could do 09 and 05.
This could be our New Year's tradition because we're only going to get older. we're never going to catch up with the years.
Yeah, we toyed with this being the final episode, but we'll come back.
Yeah,
we'll come back for at least 52 more of these.
All right. Speaking of which, what are we doing next week?
So next week we have another themed episode, which is legacy sequels. You know, with Scream coming out, there's another legacy sequel on the horizon. Or Scream 5 more specifically, because that's what I'm calling it. Yeah. But Rob and I are going to pick 2 movies apiece that don't have legacy sequels, and we're going to pitch our legacy sequel for that franchise.
All right, well, until next time.
If you're needing a friend and don't mind their pretend, watch a flick. It's your pick. This episode of Reserve Seating is brought to you by our friends at Purell.
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 When everyone around you is an asshole.